What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Blindside Sports. My name is Emmett Douglas. We're coming to you from the Blindside Studios. Now, I know it's been a little bit since we've had an episode, but today I have someone who only wears shorts on the podcast. I have someone
Good.
who is stuck with dealing with a bunch of Mets, Jets, and Knicks talk because of his co-host. And this is a guy who also, if you want fantasy advice, if do I want this receiver in, do I start, let's say, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase? Mike Harmon is your guy to go to at Swollen Dome on Twitter and Instagram. And also, he is a co-host of Jason Smith with Mike Harmon. He's a co-host on Fox Sports Sunday with Bucky Brooks. Also, the I Want Your Flex podcast with Dan Byer. He does it all. And he's also a Chicago Bears fan. So make sure to come troll him with those tweets. Mike, how you doing?
Well, I like the ending there. I'm actually heading home to Chicago this weekend. So the weekend starting, what is that, the 9th? So I'll go see the White Sox, so you can mock me there. I'll go see the Cubs. Well, I'll boo them, but they're playing the Orioles, so I don't know how much excitement there is there. But I'll be home for a couple of days. But I take all derision. Look, because in the end, we're all about fandom and having fun. And yeah, you're right. I don't ever wear pants.
Yeah, that's a very inside show joke right there. And now this got me thinking before, as you joined here, is Mike Harmon is live in the Fox Sports Radio studios right now.
Yeah,
I don't know
right across the hall from the main studio.
Unfortunately, we don't have the Mike Harmon Fox Sports Studio audio quality of the professional microphones, but he's still here live in the studio. I was telling him before the show, I'm like, too bad we couldn't have an audience of a Coop and Roberto for the Ben Maller show, just staring at you while you're talking. That'd be kind of confusing, but it kind of got me thinking. I'm like, I've done this show since August of last year, and I've never had an in-person guest. It's always a Zoom, man. It just got me thinking. I feel like it's just having the studio guest would be really fun, but Zoom it's radio for some people. It's, video for some other people. Sure. So it could just be like the boys, right? I mean,
no, but that's just it, right? It all comes together. Technology, as we learned during the pandemic, really has come a long way in this connection. Not that these devices didn't exist, but we've just started to utilize them in an entirely different way, right?
Yeah.
Each professionally, personally, right? I've bought a couple of things for family members so we could do the video link ups. I've got teenage girls, so it's all right. You can at least stare at each other for a couple of minutes, and say hello and catch up on the day versus, we weren't able to travel. We weren't able to do some of those things in the meetup. So it's helped. And certainly from a professional standpoint, if you frame it up right and, folks, like for me, it's an audio medium. I've got the face for radio, except for that, percentage of folks that like guys that are a bit husky, that don't like wearing pants. I guess there's an audience for everybody, Emmett.
Exactly. That's how it is. Now, speaking of, there's an audience for everybody. You and Fox Sports Radio is very diverse, right? With who they have. Like, you have people like Ben Maller, who's very unique in how he does things. You have guys like Covino and Rich, who they do it a little differently, more kind of towards the entertainment side of things. Then you have you and Jason Smith, who just goof around, but it's about like sports, and Jason has these crazy hot takes. And what was it like when you got the opportunity, to be Jason Smith's best friend, Mike Harmon?
Yeah, I'd been around Fox Sports Radio a while, right? I was on Sunday mornings. I was a guest on a lot of shows where, it wasn't a 10-minute thing. It's like, hey, can you just hang out for an hour? And it was during football season. We're talking football and doing some fantasy advice, whatever. And I had just taken over the weekend overnight show. And that was announced. And we worked that out over a holiday when I was down in Florida visiting my mom and dad with my kids. And like 2 days later, the offer said, how about I came up with a different thought. It's like, okay, do you know Jason Smith? I was like, well, we've done one segment together and I know of his work. And in theory, he knows of mine, right? The way this business works. And so we got on the phone, he and I, and before that weekend ended, it was all right. I'll come back and I'll do one weekend of the overnight because Coop was going to be my producer, right? So
Oh,
this was
wow.
one of the internal guys was getting a shot, which is always an important thing, right? Because if you're in a place wherever you're working, and I say this to anybody, whether it's in radio or whatever job you're doing, there is a power to and a morale thing from a hiring within kind of perspective. Is like, all right, one of our guys that we've been slugging it out with in the overnights or in the early mornings or whatever the schedule is, gets a shot. And so I had to tell those guys before we opened the mics on the Saturday that on Monday I was starting a thing with Jason. So they were going to start a whole other process, and eventually it ended months later with Jonas Knox taking over that slot, and he now hosts Two Crows and a Cup of Joe with LeVar Arrington and Brady Quinn. But
Former
with
partner LeVar
Jason,
Arrington too on the Sundays.
say that again.
I said your former partner LeVar
Yeah,
Arrington.
yeah, we had a great time on that, right? And for LeVar, he's a guy with a lot of thoughts. Obviously, a number 2 overall pick. We had the connection. He's a Penn State guy. Me being a Northwestern alum, so a lot of Big Ten chatter off air. He's got his kids in athletics, and his little one at home, and all that. So we bonded on a number of levels. So really excited for the work that he's doing, and grateful for the time that we had on Sundays. And now Bucky has to put up with my nonsense. But the Monday that it started with Jason, right? It became all right, here's how it's supposed to kind of go the way it was laid out. And I don't know. He'd always been a solo host, except for hosting TV shows. So for him, working with a partner was going to be different. So I think early on, we're just trying to figure each other out, right? He's got the Syracuse background, New York, big pop culture guy, me, huge pop culture guy with, at the time, 2 much smaller daughters at home. So, through the ages of Frozen and all those fun things in the Disney world and into all the Teen Nick and everything else, we've woven all of those fun. Weaving was the word I was looking for. We've woven all that into as I joke and Jason gets mad at me, it's like, it's layering, right? It's kind of putting it all together and trying to give everybody a big hug and bring them in, right? Hot sports takes combined with some humor, some song lyrics, a movie reference here and there. Not contrived, but reminding folks that in the end, we're talking about games, right? The rest of the stuff, like we got a lot of legal things that we have to traverse, and you got to watch your words carefully. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is really just the stuff we grew up loving and watching, and now we're blessed to be able to yell at each other on the radio and hopefully bring an audience in to where it's a community, like Ben has with his Maller militia, where you just sit in and wonder what's going to come next.
Yeah, and it's very interesting too, because you guys are on the 7 to 11 time slot that you guys are on. That's on the Pacific Coast time, by the way, 10 to 2 Eastern. It's very interesting because this is towards if we're talking like NBA, MLB, like the Eastern coast side of things, East Coast side of things are starting to wrap up. Half the time, especially during football season, you have stories breaking. You guys are in the middle of games. So, I'm sure there's been times, I know Jason's talked about this and you've talked about this before, I'm sure, is where you guys had this whole show prepped, and then, like, for example, like, let's see, Steph Curry drops like 55 or something in a random playoff game and starts this whole new narrative. And you guys are really good at calling the audibles on the show and talking about what is, really current. And you guys are usually one of the first people to react to big, championships or big plays in games, because the games take place at around the time your show is on. They're freshly marinated or marinating at that point.
Yeah, that's the beauty, and I think what makes the time slot most attractive, right? We have a great breadth of affiliates. Kurt Kretschmar, our guy, our affiliate director, does a great job, and we're on to like 430 some odd markets.
That's a lot, yeah.
right? So a lot of towns across the country, and you're trying to make sure you're cognizant of when you've got a big market that's avails itself, right? So if a Dodger game ends and Dodger talk is done, we'll get a note, hey, LA is back on. So if there's an LA story, it comes in. But to your point about live games, that's one of the things we pride ourselves on is that a lot of folks like to, wait, lick their finger and then hold it up and see which way the wind blows. And then
Yep.
they run their counter to it, or they just lean in really hard to the direction that everybody's going. With us, it's like, all right, here's what's happening. And I always call it a spidering effect, Emmett, where, you take a spider web and you got to start, and then it starts going in all sorts of different directions, right? So you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out how many different ways can we take that base event, Steph dropping a big number in a playoff game, without getting too deep into the Mount Rushmores and legacy plays or whatever. List stuff is fun only in the fantasy context generally for me. Otherwise, I kind of tongue in cheek will make fun of it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Chet Holmgren, right, has his first big game in summer league, so we joked about the,
The
Chet,
Cheds.
yeah, all the
Yep.
Chets that you would know in history. So having fun with that, but it really does, when we get a big piece of news. Unfortunately, sometimes we have untimely passings. Sometimes you have firings that are under cover of night, trades, all these
Or
different
Alex
things.
Teicher eating some ribs.
That really kind of set things aside. I think Jason was a bit shocked at Alex Teicher, normally called the vegan
Yep.
by Ben Maller affectionately, and he told us that he had some ribs over the weekend, and I think it was a shock to Jason's system, and it offended his sensibilities. So it shocked him for a second. But you're trying to figure out in that moment, what's the angle, what's the opening and the opportunity to have a deeper conversation. And again, it's not deep thoughts with Jack Handy from the old Saturday Night Live, or we're not writing Shakespeare here or changing the world, but you want to give something thought provoking and have a little fun, right? If there's a crazy play that affects a Monday or a Thursday night football game, we're going to be the first to break it down live on air and try to dissect it. We don't run away from it. And you know what? You might get it more information by morning that completely renders what we
Yep.
moot. Yeah.
I remember. Yeah. So you say that too, and I will. When I do like a solo episode of Blindside Sports, I will prep everything that I want to talk about. Usually the night before, a couple hours before. There have been times where I had this whole thing. I had this whole segment planned about Jason Tatum in the finals, and then the next game, it was like game 5. I don't remember the exact game. He had a good game. I was like, I can't even talk about this without. So to like you have to redo stuff in sports radio, sports media. I'm sure you and Dan Byer, I Want Your Flex hosts, have to deal with that all the time with, for example, like especially last couple of years with, oh, this guy's gonna be a great addition, great pickup to your roster, like, and then 2 days later, you guys see that dreaded news, tested positive for COVID. Like sports radio, you have to be really good at adapting on the fly. Now, I have to ask you, Jason Smith has some takes that some of, me included, would be like, Jason, what, dude? But what is that one take that sticks out in your mind where Jason, had it, tweeted it, said it on the air, and you were doubting it, and then, well, turns out it was right. What was that for you? What was the one that sticks out? Like, I'm talking like his worst of worst takes to you at the time. Like there's a bunch of them that were like, he's probably gonna be right about Kyrie being on the Lakers now. I hope not.
I mean, that's not a hot take. I'm not giving him credit for that one. But yeah, he has had a few of those moments predictive wise that things started to run into place for him. So it's that's annoying because he likes to say I told you so, which means I have to hear I told you so a lot. I don't know. He's had some of the team successes, right, where he's jumped on board a squad and they've had some degree of success, or maybe he's been a little early on them, but still you get to claim them, as it were. I do like the fact that at least in the moment you mentioned Jason Tatum, so I'll stay there, where he crowned him the next guy. and then he struggled mightily in the finals.
Yeah.
So
Didn't he say it's gonna be MVP next year?
well, you know what? It's a fun take, right? Because you start
It
looking
is.
ahead,
It's not
and
even that out of it's not even that outlandish too. Like that's that's a crazy part about this. Like it's when you think about it, like first glimpse of, or first, audio hearing of it, if you will, you're like, Jason, what? But when you think about it, Tatum win an MVP. I mean, you see what he's done in, regular season and most of these playoffs. I mean, anything's possible.
no,
LeBron's
but
not
that's
getting any
it, right?
younger.
Right, he's a top 10, top 12 guy. If you would look at the futures odds already, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now it's just a question of how did the dominoes fall. So in this case, he was kind of going down the next, right? We were talking about Ja Morant. Well, I've been talking about Ja Morant a lot, and then he decided to go further, saying, "Hey, this guy can win MVP," and unfortunately, he got hurt, so we didn't get
The
to
curse
see
of the
whether
Jason
that.
Smith.
Well, that he will do that. So every
Yep.
once in a while, I'm like, all right, these are 5 guys you can't talk about for the football season because I'm heavily invested in them in the
Yeah.
fantasy world. So please
Yeah.
don't reference them on air because you're going to give everybody the Jason Smith curse.
Or
But
don't take the man cover athlete in your fantasy draft either. That
well,
that
that's
you're asking for the curse.
yeah. I think a lot of the stuff with Jason, and not to dodge the question, it's there. There's a lot of them that when you hear the theories at first blush are like, okay, it's a bit off, runs askew. Maybe you have a more visceral reaction. To me, I've worked with him long enough to kind of know the angle that he's coming at it from, so it doesn't shock me the same way it might somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're a listener that is casual and is in with us every now and again, it's going to hit the ear wrong. But if you recognize the way his brain
his brain
usually
works.
works
Yep.
on these things, yeah, it's not as crazy. And a lot of the hot takes aren't just one line hot takes, right? A lot of guys in our business are very quick with all right, here's a giant declaration, and there's no facts or anything to back it up. You can tell he marinates on it, so you got to give him credit for that.
I'm not judging the guy because the funniest thing about all of this, and I'm gonna ask you this one too, because this question because it's gonna help me because I have one possibly, but
Okay.
Jason is right like most of the time. Now, one that I have never expected him to hit on, and was this Jason or was this someone else? I don't know why I want to say it was Chris Perfett who said this. Speaking of, but was Jason the one who said that Urban Meyer could get fired halfway through the year?
Oh yeah.
Was that Jason Smith? Yep.
Sure.
And yep, nailed it right on. Urban Meyer after week 12. I remember listening to you guys. I think it was David Gascon who told you that Urban Meyer got fired. It was, one of those late night news dumps. And, there were debates on, well, is Urban going to be this guy for the Jaguars? Is he going to be this giant? Ben Maller and Arnie Spanier were really loving him. But,
well, so did Jason, to be honest, before things really went sideways. But he jumped off the bandwagon earlier than everybody else too.
Yeah, and then because I remember at first it started out with, what was it, like he partied or something, stayed after the loss to the Bengals, he like stayed back and partied, and then all the just all these accusations came out, and then was it Josh Lambo who came out
Josh Lambo, the thing at his bar in Ohio, and he stayed behind instead of traveling back with the team.
Yeah, it was a whole dumpster fire.
Yeah, I mean, you had a lot of things in the locker room that you tried to hire the former Iowa weight coach.
Yep,
where there had been some racial questions there. So, there were a lot to Tebow arrival to things. Like some of them just seemed innocuous and flippant. Like at the time, okay, trying to hire the former Iowa weight coach. Okay, there were obviously problems there in terms of activity and the allegations, but the success had always been there for Iowa football.
Yeah.
So for Urban Meyer, part of it was, all right, we're new. This guy's got a track record and we should be able to figure this out. Well, once you start adding everything else, it becomes a dominoes falling. And when you've drafted Trevor Lawrence and the locker room is gone to hell, as best you can put it out. I mean,
literally,
summary statement there. that it becomes an untenable situation to where Shad Khan just cut his losses. And I got to
Yeah,
give him credit for it, right? He could have been stubborn and watched that thing and at least waited
it would
it
have
out
only
to.
gotten worse. I'm glad he did it as much as the Jaguars are jaguaring this offseason. I'm glad he parted ways with Urban Meyer when he did. It was a perfect timing. They had nothing to lose, and all these things happening. Whether it be the I will wait coach or Urban Meyer not flying back with the team, or even the Tim Tebow thing, which Tim Tebow, I mean, if you think that was just a money thing, like I did not expect Tim Tebow to be good, but would he sell jerseys? Like I'm
No, but
sure
that's just
people.
it, right? You're trying to find some level of goodwill. Tebow obviously did a lot for Urban Meyer in his career. So, like anything where you can, pay someone back in some way or another. I mean, a lot of handshake agreements in a lot of places, nepotism or whatever, cronyism or whatever you want to call it, doesn't necessarily make it wrong. In this case, you're trying to build and establish a program. So if you're telling me, hey, this guy's the hardest working guy in the room, I can understand why you'd bring him in, right? Inspirational guy, but he's not playing his old position and really doesn't belong necessarily cutting the line to be a pro. But that's always going to be the $1 billion question. What did they really truly believe he was going to be a rosterable guy, or was he just brought in to help in some way from a motivational standpoint off the jump? Either way, it didn't come to fruition. And like you said, 12 games in, see ya.
Yeah, and our boy Jason Smith was. I think he called it right when the when was it? Maybe he
Well, no,
when
he got very resolute about it after the bar incident.
yes, that's exactly yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he
exactly what I was
got big
looking
on
for
that.
there. Now,
Yeah, so for me, I mean, and why I would have disagreed at that point is like we talk about in any format, just like we were talking about Zoom calls and whatever else, right? In studio is always preferred. A nice clean Comrex or better audio mechanism is second, and then you move on down the line, right? The last thing you want and you hope is, hey, you're on a cell phone, it's got to be clear. But we see how things change and evolve, right? The way of doing business in a billion different ways. And for Urban Meyer in that moment, it was all right, that's odd. And obviously the allegations and the video, whatever, are terrible. But that's
yeah.
more a deal between he and his wife, was my opinion of it.
Hmm.
Now, and then not flying back with the team, just because it's always been done one way doesn't mean it can't change. Because it's
Yeah.
not like Urban Meyer was going to be on there giving a giant speech on that plane. Everybody's going to be playing cards, sleeping, having a drink, having a meal, watching a movie, calling their families, or again, probably sleeping. So, him being back on that flight, I didn't think was as big a deal. Obviously, people that played the league and were around the league differed, and Jason just thought it was so out of character, showing a lack of character, that he jumped off the bandwagon he tried to build.
Yep. He was. I remember like he was like doing this, and that was one of them. I'm like, I don't see this one happening. I mean, you see a bunch of these other ones, that he does kind of get just crazily right, and
Sure.
I was after all these kept going, going, and me seeing these "I told you so" tweets by Jason Smith. I towards like November, especially with the Jags, not successful first half of the season, and Trevor Lawrence not looking like the Trevor Lawrence that we all expected, and it was his rookie year. I kind of knew something was up. Now, away from the sports and over to some fun topics, what is your favorite? I have to ask about this guy first because he makes sure you and Jason Smith sound good and make sure that everything is on the air correctly. You guys don't say any, things that can't get said on the radio. What is your favorite Alex Teichert story? It could be behind scenes or something that we all know about, but what is the great vegan tales?
Well, I think that Alex is a good spirit. He's a good energy to have with us, and we're blessed that he came to be part of our team because he knows sports, right? He plays up, with the Odd Couple, with others. He listens and he pays attention. Does he go out of
Yep.
his way to watch hours and hours of game film? No, but he knows the principal characters and everything involved. But what he brings to the table is,
Cleveland.
well, yeah, there's certain drops that he's fond of, certain players that he's either come to
Tom
love or
Brady.
hate. Yeah, stuff. The longer stuff stays in rotation, he gets tired of it. It's like, all right, who's the next character we get to go through? Almost as if they're anime characters in and of
Yep.
themselves. But I think the thing I like most is he doesn't take himself too seriously, and he doesn't take the job to where he's looking to take over the show, which is one of the dangers sometimes is, give a little and guys take a lot, and it kind of disrupts flow. So he steps in where he needs to, both for sound drops or for his own voice. But the larger part is recognizing our individual personalities, likes, pop culture, sports, what lights us up or makes us shudder. And for Jason, he likes the needling. And it's always fun to watch that at play, whether it's playing another song, right? The Kate Bush running up those hills from the Stranger Things soundtrack, or other things in the past, right? Here's a random sound clip. Here's another highlight, right? Here's the butt fumble where it
Oh,
really
yep.
doesn't belong, right? Things of that nature. Well, because
The butt fumble works every time too.
No, it does too.
Jason's out of line.
That's like getting Rick rolled, no question about it.
Oh
But
yeah, for sure.
I think the biggest part with it is just again to reset it, because we do have to talk about a lot of serious stuff, right? If we were to count the number of quarter hours that, as a network, not even just our show, but as a network, we've had to spend talking about where we're at with Deshaun Watson, or where we're at with verbal battles between players or players and media and things of that nature. Alex knows when to relieve that valve, right? To press that button to get us out of it, to find something that gets us back and laughing, and really reset the tone of things, right? We'll go to a break coming out of a serious thing. He'll play the song appropriately there, but then we come back from a commercial break and it's something that has completely reset the mood, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a team, we're pretty good at that. Frostberg, our executive producer, Alex, Jason, and I, to where we're pretty good at, all right, it's compartmentalized, right? That we put that box in, we bow it up, and then we push it off to the side and get back to whatever the next story is. And I think for Alex, that watching him needle Jason sometimes, especially when we're all in studio together, is really great theater. Because by hour 3, Jason starts pacing the halls.
Yep. And that's a thing too, also with back in studio together, Frostberg, who worked from home for the, during the, majority of the COVID. I mean, we're still obviously COVID's starting to get back to, normal lifetimes and people living their lives, and, Frostberg coming to studio. And even like, I feel like there's an element of the show missing because I kind of forgot about Frostberg. I thought for a while, I was like, is Ryan Bershinger because you guys mentioned him a lot, and because he's there at Radio Row and all this. I kind of forgot about Frostberg, and he came back to the show and first time cracking a mic in over 2 years, and made it seem like nothing ever happened. And now, like, it's like all the chemistry's back there, and you guys are all ganging up on Jason, or sometimes Frostberg with his Lakers, who what a disaster the Lakers are. Man, I really hope
that's great though. It's good theater though, Emmett.
Yep.
Either be first or be last. Don't be boring.
Yeah, I hope they don't get Kyrie Irving though. Obviously it's going to create a lot of storylines for us, but if we're talking by a basketball, standpoint, Kyrie Irving and LeBron, I just don't know, man. I just feel like there's a lot wrong with the Lakers, and Kyrie Irving's attitude and locker room presence is just the last thing they need at this moment. But at the same time, Westbrook's the last thing you need at this moment. It's two bad situations right there, and hopefully the Lakers can figure out their right moves and ultimately make the right choice for the long run, and also not having their draft picks help, because I think they have to give up their like first pick in like 2027, their first rounder to get Kyrie Irving or something like that. And yeah, it's just the Lakers. Frostberg's team they're kind of a disaster right now. But
Yeah, but
good
it's good. It's
storylines for
good for
us.
yeah, it's good for business, right? It's and as a sports host yourself and an interested observer of all this, right? In the end, I root for my teams, right? I Bulls and the Blackhawks and the White Sox and my Northwestern squad. I go through and I've obviously the Bears, but beyond that, it's rooting for a big story,
Yep.
right? Good, bad, and like as long as nobody's getting hurt, right? Those
Yes.
stories always just suck, and I don't mean to hurt. Like guys are going to get injured. I'm talking the off-field transgressions, the bad accidents, the things that are just to a whole other space.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's all fodder for entertainment, right? And it's not dehumanizing anybody like some of those assertions and things that go out in media just leave me scratching my head. It's like you're still a player, right? When we talk about any of this stuff, it's like, all right, where's your contract? You are an individual agent, right? I can love and be interested in the players and people that Kevin Durant and Draymond Green are, but still criticize whatever they're chirping about on social media or their podcasts. The two are not,
Yep.
I don't have to be all or the other, but I think, with Frostberg returning, right? Bershinger was with us live on Radio Row. Yeah, when the Super Bowl was here in Los Angeles. And part of that is,
And he let some guy steal Jason Smith's food. Or no, that's your food. Your dinner. He let some
oh yeah. So,
was
yeah,
it who was it? It was the fan Fabiano? No, it wasn't.
well,
The
Fabiano was around, but I forget who was back there. But yeah, my leftovers disappeared from one of our meals, and it wasn't a cheap meal either. So that was the thing that I was kind of
and it
salty
wasn't
about.
even Bursch.
Yeah, they allowed them to throw it out.
Yeah.
But life goes on. Again, it's food, and
And
as you
also
can,
it's all fun because I mean that's another thing that you and Jason and David Gascon especially do very well is talk about food. And our guy Gascon gets salty whenever there's anything in the studio that he can't get one bite of. He's very Gascon's very free food oriented, and I don't blame him, especially if
well, I
it's
mean
good
that's the
food.
nature of media, though. Emmett. Like
Yep.
you go to enough press boxes, you go to enough stadium, and stadia. There's always free meal to be had, and so one of the habits, good or bad, that Jason and I had gotten into before the pandemic is it takes a long time to drive from our respective homes into the studio. Not quite as long as Ben, but on a good day, it would take me 90 minutes to get door to door. So
Wow.
maybe I'd cook for my family, but then I'd grab a quick bite on the way out. So we'd get up here and it'd be like 7:30 and it'd be like, all right, we haven't eaten. People got used to being fed for free because we would generally take the approach of, all right, well, if we're already buying, just buy a little more, whatever. But some guys are slow with wallet when it comes down to it as well, right? Not looking to take a turn, but even cough up a buck for tips, maybe a chip too. But after a while, it becomes we spent how much on food this month, or we bought how many meals? You and
How
I
many
sitting
pizzas?
here, yeah, how many pizzas, how many pastas, how many Chinese or Indian takeout, whatever the case may be. All great stuff, but it starts to add up.
Oh
And
yeah.
then the pandemic comes and you get away from that kind of thing. But now back in the studio, and it's good to see everybody the couple of days a week to get things started again. Frostberg getting back in, as you said, cracking the mic, but pre-existing some health concerns. And with COVID said, you know what, we've got to change up how we do things. And some of us can't come back to the studio. And for Justin, it was, he had a newborn at home at the time. And so you're just trying to be cautious. And, now in theory, we're back at, and given the green light to come in. So we get back to some of those elements that might have been missing for some longtime listeners. For others, it's an addition and they may like or dislike it. either way, change is inevitable, and we try to roll with the punches, right? With the different storylines we get, and certainly the opportunities to continue doing this.
Yeah, it's definitely, you guys are very good at, just cracking the mics and those pop culture references, and Alex with the drops. Like, as much as Jason doesn't like the butt fumble, the way that Tie Shirt does it is just very unexpected. And then like along with my best friend Mike Harmon, hobo, or whatever he plays for you.
Right?
Yeah, whatever he plays for you.
It's Ben Maller yelling the word hobo.
So, it sounds like you, like from very.
No, it's evidently a Ben clip. So
see, the thing is with Ben Maller,
Nichols or what, but
the thing is with Ben Maller is that guy. He has him, Eddie Garcia especially. They have some of the most out of context drops in the system, and I hate to agree with Ben here. He's not listen. He's probably not going to listen to this, knowing Ben Maller. No, I'm playing. But he's been on the show. Love Big Ben. If I were to tell him this, that half of those drops are spliced together, it would boost his ego. But but for the listeners, some of those out of context Ben drops are very spliced together. Like the one with the hotel and the LA man, that one is very spliced together.
No, but that's
Eddie's are natural
with audio, as long as it's not malicious, right? Because that's the other thing, right? If folks want to be nefarious and have problems with it, but I think that's the beauty of here at Fox Sports Radio, not to go all company man, is that we're allowed to be ourselves, right?
Yep.
And Eddie, Ben have a long-standing relationship. Jason and I have been going at it here at Fox for 9 years almost at this point. So when you look at those kind of relationships, you're going to have days where you get on each other's nerves. And some of the back and forth that you hear, us, Chris and Rob, wherever you have multiple voices going at it, there's going to be real tension sometimes.
Yep.
It's either, you're not understanding the point, you're purposefully mishearing the point. Maybe you really just take offense at what's being said, that you're different. And obviously the last couple of years, whenever you get into societal, economic, political, like all of that kind of married together, there's going to be a little bit of disagreement, but hopefully productive conversation that's come out of it. And we have a lot of fun, right? Hopefully that's the one thing that comes through each night. If we're not having fun, then the person on the other end of the line, listening, driving, working their job, sitting there with rocking their kid to sleep, whatever it is, they're not going to have fun either. So hopefully laughing at and with us each night.
Yes, sir. Now, Emmett Douglas, Mike Harmon stopping by on Blindside Sports here. Now, I want to get to something, give you guys a little bit of a fantasy point of view here, as our fantasy football drafts are quickly approaching. And I have the perfect guy on the podcast for fantasy advice. Mike Harmon. I'd like to say I'm good at fantasy, but I've only been in deep 3 years, and this is my 4th year doing it now. So Mike, you've been in the fantasy game a very long time. You've been in multiple leagues, multiple different types of leagues. And with the drafts approaching and the return of I Want Your Flex approaching, you've probably been going full on into the universe of NFL players, of who you want on your fantasy rosters this season. Now, I want to ask you, I'm gonna give it a number here. I'm sure you probably have these, written down because you're Mike Harmon. You're on top of it. Give me 5 underrated guys that people aren't looking at, and then 5 guys to avoid at all costs that people, that are pretty common characters in the fantasy game.
All right. Well, first off, let's start with some of the undervalued characters along the way, because you know what I do. I pull up my lists and whatever. Because look, I'm tired. When we get down to it, look, in Buffalo, I think a lot of people are going to get fired up about him, so you may have to go a little earlier. But I was a big backer of Josh Allen early, which means I think Gabriel Davis is a guy that you want as maybe as high as a mid number 2 wide receiver when it's all said and done. I think there's great value to be had for him. You go down the line, Running backs, if he can, it's the old if he can stay healthy, right? We do this,
Yep.
and you've heard do this with plenty of NBA players. But Miles Sanders is talking a big game about what the Eagles' offense is. The only way it gets there is if he's really good. I know you got
Yeah.
Gainwell. I know you've got other guys leeching in, but he's going to have to be fantastic if that offense is really going to hum along. Cleveland, go to Kareem Hunt, right? Nick
He
Chubb
was my
admitted,
dark horse 2 years ago in the 2020 fantasy, that year. I was able to pick him up as a free agent. I had Marlon Mack originally as my number
okay,
one guy.
sure.
Kareem Hunt instantly came and became that number one guy after Marlon got the week 1 ACL tear. And Kareem Hunt, that he's always on my board for that reason. Anyway, keep going.
But I think he's a guy that you may see some great value, right? Obviously, we're expecting Watson to be suspended for the year. That would be the guesstimate, right?
Baker's
Is
probably not playing for
this year.
the Browns
Baker's
either.
gone. And so it becomes Brissett, who, while he may not be able to stretch the field, he'll manage the game. And you've got enough weapons, including Hunt out of the backfield as a receiver. I think that's where he makes a huge bounce for you there as well. Going a little deeper as we go through, we've talked about guys like Tony Pollard and stuff, so there's no reason to really hammer the job. If things break right in Chicago, guy that is going to be, the quarterback's best friend's your tight end, Cole Kmet. They've been very excited about his work in Chicago, and I'm not even going homer here. I'm just looking at a guy who's fallen off the map based on early expectations from when he came out of Notre Dame. First couple of years, bit of a disappointment. How much of that is on Nagy and what he did and how he structured things, how much was on Kmet. But early reports out of Eberflus's camp is that he's making great strides. So year 3 could be a guy that comes up with a huge effort for you there as well. And then if we're really going to go down the list and have some fun, Naheem Hines.
Ooh.
With Matt Ryan under center, Taylor's obviously going to be 1 or 2, right? When we're looking at the top of the board, that Hines is a guy that might catch 80 balls in this offense. And if that's the case, being drafted as a running back 6 right now, he's going to offer tremendous value.
Yeah. And I like the Miles Sanders thing. And, there's a very big if, and that's fantasy in general is staying healthy. Sure. But I really like what the Eagles have been doing. Jalen Hurts has been getting better each year. And I think with a full healthy Miles Sanders season, and how weak the NFC East is as well, there's a bunch of question marks there, and there isn't really that number one team yet. I'd feel like that. I mean, obviously the Eagles, Cowboys are the most effective teams, but man, that Eagles offense, I'm really high on them, and I also really think the Gabriel Davis move. I think obviously you said it, you're going to get that earlier into the draft because of how crazy people are going for Josh Allen. I mean, people are picking. I have seen multiple picks and people who, gamble, look at the Vegas side of things, take the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I'm starting we're getting closer to that month of August where the football grind starts up again. And I'm starting to research. I don't know if I agree with that statement. And I am a big Josh Allen, big Buffalo Bills guy. I really like the energy that team has, but man, that AFC is just super, super stacked. And here's a great lead on. The stacked AFC could lead you to not take players for certain reasons, right? So where are those 5 players, Mike, that you would recommend maybe holding back on? Or there's some question marks for you that maybe us normal fantasy players don't have, don't think about when on that draft board?
Well, I would say right off the jump, I'm going to be counter to a lot of guys in the business is that at the top of the draft, I want nothing to do with McCaffrey.
Yep, I can't stay healthy.
Tremendous player, but his health, the fact that Sam Darnold's still your quarterback, your offensive line is still terrible, unless all of a sudden each one of those players who wasn't good a year ago has some massive growth in them. And look, year to year, maybe there's a better scheme. I'm just not buying in, right? A guy that's been hurt. So for me, I'm out. That would be the first one.
Yeah, definitely. I Christian McCaffrey, in that whole Panther scheme is just he can't stay healthy. Sam Darnold, man, Jason Smith was right on that one too. Not good as a Panther. Panthers need to do something, and I think the Panthers would be wise in trying their hardest to go for one of the quarterbacks next year and getting a top pick, because that quarterback class is much better than it was this year. So Panthers, you're 1 for 1 on the checks for not drafting.
Yeah, the hard part for Matt Rule though is he's in that terrible spot in that he may not be around to coach up the quarterback from 2023.
Nope.
If this really goes sideways, right? So he's a guy that I definitely look away from. Devontae Adams is intriguing to me. Look, Derek Carr's good. He's not Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So even if they've got the old college connection, again, it's all based on value of where I have to draft them, right? So
yes.
Devontae Adams is going to come off the board as probably your 4th, 5th, 6th receiver. And the way drafts are going now, people are heading to wide receivers over a lot of these running backs because of the fear of injuries and secondary and tertiary backs. So you'll have to draft Adams, I think, higher than I want. I'm out. James Conner in Arizona. High, massive touchdown total. That's his only value. Eno Benjamin is the name to watch in Arizona in that backfield for this year. Not to mention you start without DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah, Marquise Hollywood Brown comes over. That's fine. But James Conner,
can he stay healthy?
Well, can he stay healthy? But also, he's you're so touchdown dependent there, Emmett, that again, where I've got to draft him, which is right now at the back end of the 2nd round, I'm out. I'll go find someone else. I'll take my shot that Saquon Barkley can stay healthy. I'll take my shot that Cam Akers becomes the guy in LA. And the guy that we've seen glimpses of. Hell, David Montgomery in Chicago, even with Khalil Herbert there. I'll take it that there's better value there than banking on a guy to go for almost 20 touchdowns again.
Yep. The odds there are just, that's the thing with fantasy too, is a lot of people kind of just go quick kind of stats. They don't really put much thought into it. Oh, Devontae Adams had a killer season last year. Oh, James Conner, 20 touchdowns. Let's go for that. And, I'm sure there's people like you and our guy Dan Byer who analyze literally every move. And you guys are in, how many leagues are you in this year, Mike?
I've accepted invites to 6. I've got a 7th pending, and then we may do something around the offices this year. We've been kicking it about, but it's always a matter of trying to get enough bodies together to make it a worthwhile event as opposed to half the league auto picking.
Yes. Auto picking, just sit. That's not really fun to me. I mean, you got to sit through the draft and pick your players individually and see what, I feel like you have more freedom that way too. Sometimes the auto draft kind of screws you. Now, a couple more questions for you, Mike. I know you got that commute ahead of you, and I'm sure a very nice meal at home that you're gonna.
Oh, you know what's waiting for me? Sleep.
Yeah.
Well, because I got to be up in 6 hours to get my kids moving. So.
Yeah. At least you don't have to do Dan Patrick tomorrow. That'd be like 4 hours.
You know what? I'd love to do it. I mean, exposure to a different time slot / audience, and obviously.
Are you guys back on this week, or are you guys done?
No, we're doing just our slot the rest of the week. So Byers in with me on Wednesday night, and then Smith and I for Thursday and Friday, and then I'm off a week to go run amok in Chicago.
Yeah, I wonder where Smith's gonna run amok. Maybe do you think he's gonna catch a Mets game somewhere in like New York or something? Like where the Mets play?
Well, I know he's coaching a lot, right? His kid's softball team. He's brought that up a couple of times on.
Oh yeah.
So they've got some tournaments and stuff going on, but
Zoe Smith has made her very famous appearance with that show open.
Yeah,
her name.
Well, what's funny though is that show open is next level stuff.
That's the best show open on Fox Sports Radio.
Yeah, Vito had some fun with that one, so we salute him for taking some of the weirdest elements of the show and really hammering that out in a whole other way. But that's just it, right? It's again, you got to give folks a little window into who you are in enough, right? You don't want to give away the farm. You got to keep some mystery. But
Yep.
on.
Yeah, Vito really does it well. Like you guys, like the Odd Couple and Gottlieb and all them had their same show opens, and Ben has a couple different ones, but you and Jason have, I think, the most Farley, and this is without a doubt for me. I don't have to think about it, but the most entertaining and next level show opens. Like you guys have the Zoe Smith one, a couple other ones. Obviously the ones roasting you and Jason for liking the Jets and the Bears, which that kind of has to happen when the Jets and the Bears have two fans on the same show. Stuff like that. It's comedy. Now, speaking of comedy, one of my favorite segments that you and Smith do, and I'm sure there's an obvious answer, but people are curious. The Magic Johnson Twitter game. Where did this come from? We all know that Magic is the most vanilla and obvious tweeter here. Like, for example, I tweeted this in, I quote tweeted one of Magic's tweets. I was like, this sounds like the start to a Fox Sports Radio update. Like Steph Curry dropped 35 points, 9 rebounds in that 115-105 win against the Celtics last night. Like, so where did the Magic Johnson tweet game come from? And also part 2, and then I'll let you go. What is your favorite Jason Smith game or segment?
Well, the Magic Johnson game is probably the favorite just for the sake of how often it was attempted to be duplicated.
Oh, people copy that all the time
in some format. So like when we started that, it was we were just joking, going like, and it was always, no matter what it said, it's like, that can't be real. Like we would have debates off air. It's like, no, come on, you're lying to me. And so he thought it was funny because like he'd see something and he'd read it off to me going, what do you think of that? It's like, that can't be real. He goes, no, look, it's on his account. And so we started joking, and he goes, I think I got an idea. And look, we don't do a ton of bits, right? There's not a lot. I mean, the other one that's obviously fun when we decide to bring it up, if there's a huge milestone or something, a record broken that was last done in, I don't know, 1984. And so did this event happen in 1984? Yes or no? And then he'll find the most random things from, the almanacs, encyclopedia online, Wikipedia, wherever he can find a source to give us the sports almanac, like you're in Back to the Future. All those things, to where that one's kind of fun because it takes you back into that place, and each reference begets 2 or 3 other references to it. Right, with the Magic Johnson Twitter game, that is the most fun when DeSager is in, the great Steve DeSager, because he gets irritated, right? Yep. As a child of Los Angeles, it offends his sensibilities that one of his heroes is tweeting out such drivel. And when he gets caught up in myth psychology, it gets into this great battle. And eventually I'm going to turn a camera on him during it, because I think it's going to be like Scanners at some point his head's going to explode. But I'd say that one's the favorite. We don't do a lot of regulars, but that one seems to really engage folks. We get a lot of recommendations for fake tweets with other movie references or TV shows or stat lines or guys' heights, weights, shoe sizes, where they what they're at hotels, you name it, we've seen it. And it's one of those, again, community kind of things. We have a chuckle, and that usually comes up really well for us, especially if you've got really heavy stories on one end, as we deal with CTE stories and the Watson story, things of those natures. But then to be able to come back to the top and say, let's have some fun.
Yep.
Because in the end, we're supposed to be having fun.
Now, speaking of Steve DeSager, one of the the all-time greats, you brought up the Magic Johnson. I brought that up, and it reminded me of something that took place a couple months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and I want to make a joke about this because DeSager's okay, but right, DeSager got sick in the middle of the Magic Johnson, or before it, but DeSager had a situation at the start of the Magic Johnson Twitter game, so where he couldn't play it, and you bring this up, and I'm like, oh, the DeSager vomit comment makes me it makes me maybe he just didn't want to play the Magic Johnson Twitter game, but I was like, oh, DeSager will be back at the top of the hour, right? And then it's Jason Smith scrambling to do the update. How did that happen? Did Tyshirt or whoever was in that night be like, hey, yo, Jason, do the update? Or did he do it on his own, like on his own will? Or how'd that go?
Well, yeah, it was a situation whereby, look, we're doing live radio, right? You could tape an update to have in the can, so to speak, in case something happens. But, otherwise it's whatever copy they've put together. You kind of run it against a prompter to kind of guesstimate how much time it's going to take to read you through. I mean, there's some work that goes in and some editing and creative writing that gets into to make sure it hits all those points. But Steve hadn't recorded one. And unfortunately, look, you have dinner doesn't agree with you, you're overtired, whatever the case may be.
It's bad El Playoco.
Well, there's that too, right? I didn't want to slam any individual brand, possible sponsors. Hey, I love the tacos when they work. But
when they work, yeah, exactly.
Hey, I call it what it is. But he excused himself, and then we came
very professional
back.
Steve DeSager.
Yeah, and off he went. And Jason texted me, goes, "Wait till you hear this." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And then all of a sudden, we are Fox Sports, and you hear the little chime, and it's time for the update, and there's Jason. Mets. I
didn't even like pay attention to the update because I was like watching something else, and I hear Mets. I'm like, oh, what happened to DeSager?
That's right. Yeah. So that's exactly it, Emmett. Same thing for me. And I just started chuckling. I go, what did you decide to, take over and stage a bloodless coup over the update desk? He goes, nah, Steve's not well. He'll be back. And then eventually he was a couple minutes later.
Which was the craziest part about all of this too, is DeSager is such a radio legend. Most people would have been like, oh, boss man, I'm out. I'm going home. I just had some bad dinner. I can't do this, but here goes a friend of America, Steve DeSager, for the Bomb of the Hour update. And that was one of my favorite Jason Smith stories, actually. And someone, I don't know, I think Tyshirt might have been gone that night. So it's gonna be hard to find the audio of Jason doing the update, but that needs to get played again.
Emmett, I can get that. That's no problem. I'm sure Jason's got the date marked in his notes somewhere, and we can unearth that. I'll find that for you.
I know Tyshirt wanted to hear it too. Yeah, he was gone. I think it was the real Don Brown who was doing that, because Tyshirt asked about it also. Because
all right, send me a note when we're done, just to remind me, and I'll see if we can't ferret that out. And
Alex Tyshirt would love it too.
Yeah, so it's just that kind of thing, right? It's a good team environment, in terms of producing the show. We have a lot of fun with each other. Steve's amazing.
Oh yeah,
Steve's amazing, right? All the update folks, Ralph and David and Monsi's new, and Dan and Isaac on my Sunday.
I love Ilo. I love when Ilo works with Jason, because the Mets of, I remember last time he was in for Jason, he was on Jason's Mets, and something about Isaac that he does that no one else does really is he finds audio clips from movies from 90s and older movies, and we'll put them in his updates. It's genius.
Well, but that's just it, right? Everybody's trying to make an impression, right? You never know who's listening, and let's face it, nobody is tethered, and I haven't seen a lifetime contract put in front of me. So you're always trying to not only impress and entertain the audience in front of you, but also recognizing an audience that might hear something for the first time that might have, create an opportunity for you, or maybe it becomes bit worthy, right? If it's that good. So, it's like anything. You try it, sometimes you do so with some trepidation and fear, and maybe it doesn't land, but the idea itself either spawns some chuckling, maybe a groan or two for effect. But in the end, if you're not trying something, then, you're falling behind, right? If you're not trying to innovate and change and Doesn't mean I want to go and rewrite and redo everything that we do on a nightly basis. But, like when Ilo does those things, because he drops things on me and Bucky on Sunday
Oh
morning,
yeah.
sometimes it's 2 minutes before we can talk. We're laughing so hard because it's a movie that we haven't thought about in forever. And all of a sudden the reference starts sparking all sorts of other discussions.
Yeah, you do bring that up, and that's the thing that Ilo, and a lot of the Fox Sports personalities like Alex Teichert do really well is play these certain, whether it be a drop or a movie reference at the perfect time. I mean, we can all try and do that. I could do that. You could do that. Like anyone that we talk to or see on the Twitter universe could try and do that. But will it turn out good? It takes 45 bad ideas for one good one. And Ilo just hits on him. Like I'm sure he goes through, he probably has a playlist of these on his desktop that he'd go through before the update. Ooh, I need a reference to us, like the fantasy thing a while ago with Jock Peterson and Tommy Pham. I'm sure he was scrolling for a while and he found that perfect reference and put it together. I know he did something for that. I'm gonna have to go back and look. But yeah, he definitely puts it together well, Mike. And I know you have a 90-minute drive ahead of you, so I'm not gonna keep
Oh,
you
no, no,
for
no.
much.
It's late at night. It's only 30 now.
Oh,
It's the
yeah,
traffic coming in that's the problem.
yeah.
Post our
LA,
show, it becomes a ghost town starting to head that way. Unless there's
yeah,
construction, then it's a problem. But
yeah, or like a huge party town. And I'm sure last night, if you were actually you did the morning show, but I'm sure last
yeah, I
night
hid
would
my
have been
house. Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
Well, the thing, and it's really become and not to be old man on the lawn, because I used to, Emmett, you'll appreciate this. As a kid, we had a family across the street from us that, I kid you not, I don't know where they bought them. I don't really care, but they'd burn off tons of fireworks. And where the trajectory of all their stuff was, a lot of it would land on our lawn.
Hmm.
And so I had a deal that every July 5th, I was up early. I would go out and I'd collect all the refuse and I'd just go return it onto their yard. And it did not make me a popular man, except for a couple of neighbors, and certainly my mom appreciated it. But, July 4th this year, obviously we had some tragedies and some terrible situations, particularly in my home state of Illinois. But I just noticed a lot more of, let's just have stuff that makes a lot of noise versus the
Yeah,
old oohs and ahs of color and,
I
decorative
noticed
kind
that
of.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that was kind of odd, and it's kind of a sad loss of things because, I was, whatever, I was tired. Clearly having gotten up early to do the Dan Patrick show with Jason and, preview the hot dog eating contest and everything else. But when we got to the end of the night, I'm like, all right, I'm watching TV. I was catching up Stranger Things. My kids kept yelling at me. Jason kept yelling at me. So I tried to
High
power
shirt.
through. Yeah, tight shirt to a degree. So I tried to power through. So I was getting up to the end of season 3, but the entire time I've got people like these mini explosions outside my window. I'm like, that's like $10 for that. Like, what are you doing?
It's more than $10 if they get it like these fireworks stands too. And
Yeah,
I've been
look.
hearing stuff,
I'm so
before the
out of
show
whack
too.
with pricing. Yeah.
Yeah, before the show, I've heard from my window the explosions. And even at the fireworks show, I was at one local fireworks show the other night, which had a situation. Well, I'll say kind of happened after this because it's kind of public news in my area. But
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah. So I noticed a lot more noisemakers, these weird like popping things. But
Hmm.
I was very lucky. The people I with, we left immediately after the show. Apparently, some dudes in the Olympia area didn't like each other. Got into a little scuffle, and some dude, had a weapon on him and discharged and got a man. And unfortunately, he didn't survive. So,
Oh wow.
and
I
I
hadn't
know
seen that.
I saw someone's post who was really like close to it, and you know, the 4th of July was a really weird. We also had the tragedy in your area in Illinois and my stuff here. Like it's been a weird year, and I feel like a lot of people are just living it up to their extremes with 2020, 2021 not being normal to most people. And I think that's a lot of it too. People are just celebrating so much so they go for all these loud fireworks to disrupt some others' nights and disrupt all the local dogs and all these pets' lives also. So I like fireworks, but this year was just something else, man. Like people are still doing them tonight, like because you get all these good deals at the fireworks stand, at least in my area. There was one open today, actually.
No, that's right. Day after, right? Just like half off Easter candy after
Yep.
Easter. And so, but yeah, not to bring it to a down place, but as you say, you had a couple of police officers shot in Philly. You had the stuff in Highland Park. Some of our friends, one of our regular guests, Pete Futek, College Football News. It's an area where he's normally walking while he talks to us on the show, was
Wow.
where that all went down. So, you realize how small the world gets at
Yep.
times and the 6 degrees of separation. So, Pat Fitzgerald, the coach of the Northwestern, and so many others, the goal is to go 1-0 today, right?
Yep.
If you're playing a game, go 1-0. For your life, you're still on the upside. As bad as it may be, it's my find your wins, right? Relaunching that mantra, that website, in addition to everything I'm doing here, try to find some positive things, but recognizing that each day, as much garbage as you may be having to deal with, odds are you laughed or smiled at something, even if it's just for a moment.
Yep.
So, coming out of yesterday, there was still a lot of good going across and a lot of great celebrations and togetherness.
Good food. Yep.
Plenty of good food. Absolutely.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
it's that kind of stuff, Emmett. So,
Yep.
still trying to find those connections and, like you say, get back out into the world after a couple of years of, forced seclusion, maybe fear-based seclusion, political stuff, whatever, that, folks are re-engaging for the first time and maybe a little out of sorts with their social wares and norms.
Yeah. And Mike Harmon, I just gotta say, man, it was fun having you on. Thanks for jumping on at Swollen Dome on Twitter and Instagram. And I Want Your Flex podcast is going to be dropping very, very soon here. And stay tuned to the Jason Smith Show with Mike Harmon from 7 to 11 Pacific, 10 to 2 Eastern, and then Sunday mornings with our guy, Bucky Brooks from 6 to 10. And be sure, the thing is with Mike is when you need that fantasy football advice, I Want Your Flex is there for you. So when's that first episode come out? If you, do you guys have that planned?
Dan and I are both going on trips the week of the 9th, 10th, 11th. So the following week, we've got a couple of friends in the industry. They're going to pop by and kind of talk through some of their league settings and some of their ins and outs. And then we'll start getting into positional stuff and rankings and all in earnest starting early August. And obviously, Emmett, whenever you need me to come on and rant and pick my brain, or I can pick yours about fantasy football, how about we make that a deal during the year as well?
Yep, I got to get Jason on too.
I'll stalk him and force him on for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure that his Mets win that night too. So it's a good show.
No. You want him to lose, so he'll be salty.
Oh yeah, he's gonna come. He's probably gonna call in sick for doing the show. He's like, I can't do it. He's gonna pull the COVID booster shot line. No, I'm playing. Man, that one got me too, though. The first two I was fine, but the booster, man,
the booster got you.
Yeah, like not as bad as Jason, but I was a little tired. I'm not gonna lie.
When I got my second, I had a rough night, like maybe about a 4-hour period. It came and went very quickly, but I went through the overheated to the chills to shaking to done. Probably 3 p.m. to like 9 p.m. It was like a 4 to 6 hour. And I was like, all right, let's go. What's next? Just very strange, very, very wild and erratic. My kids were scared as could be, especially when I started convulsing because they thought I was having a seizure or something.
Oh yeah. That's
so it was weird. So they were a bit terrified. It passed and you move on. So yeah, it's tough. I really do think he just wanted a day off. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, he wanted a Dan Byer to come in and do the feud.
Hey, we'll do it again. And Dan and I are we're excited to get back to season 3 of the iWatcher Flex. It's a lot of work, but fantasy football is something I've been blessed to be part of professionally since '99, before you were
Yeah,
born, Emmett.
yeah. You and Dan Byer do great stuff over there, man.
I
And
appreciate you.
yeah, I remember back when I first kind of started really listening to Fox, you guys had the morning show. You guys had that for about 4 years, and then Dan moved on to bigger, I won't say better,
Yeah, it's
but
okay.
bigger opportunities. The red zone show, I mean, that's a pretty cool, Dan just makes sure if you're in the car, he's your guy to keep you updated from 2 to 5 on Sundays. Dan Byer and George Reister. We'll plug Dan the Man on this podcast. He's a great dude. At Dan Byer on Fox. Because does I Want Your Flex have any social medias? I know we're running long here, but
we haven't combined them to anything yet, Emmett. Part of it is, since we do our personal accounts and those are so ingrained, I think if you're aware of us, Dan Byer on Fox or Swollen Dome with my giant, oversized cranium. But so like creating a new one, we actually looked at it and was like, well, starting it from scratch might be a bit of a tall order. So, but we've got some plans of how to extend the reach this year, so it'll be fun. We're looking forward to getting back after it. It's like we're doing the work for our respective shows anyway, and to try to win our league, why not help as we can? And obviously more guys that will tap into their brains, between Bucky and Rich Ornberger, former offensive lineman.
Even Ryan Bershinger.
And Bershinger, our producer, who's smart as a whip. His Dodgers.
Is this the guy who gave up Jonathan Taylor to Bo in week 2?
Hey, I'm not saying he does everything right.
No. Yeah, but so Ryan and Bo are my guys. They've Bo was supposed to come on with Ryan, but Bo his wife went into labor that day, so obviously.
Well, you know what? He's had a few life-changing incidents here of late, so Burst can step up for him. It's okay, Emmett.
Yeah, no, Bo. Oh yeah, for sure. I kind of expected it. I was like, when I booked it, because they want to do the swing shift with Emmett collab, Ryan Bershinger, Bo Benson, who host swing shift with Ryan and Bo, where you get your podcasts. Another plug. Wow. But they, text.
Yeah, you're taking care of everybody. I'll make sure everybody sends you a check.
Yeah, there you go. Put my Cash App in the description. No.
That's it, buddy. Hey, start a Patreon, start it all, buddy.
Yeah. Now Bershinger was like, I want to do the collab. Obviously, me, you, and Bo, and me and Bo have a very back and forth on Twitter and chopping it up. Bo's my guy. Bersh is my guy. So we had this whole booked, and I kind of knew that the time was coming for Bo and his family to have, a kid. So I was like, what if it happens this day? And sure enough, we were going to record in the evening, like 4 or 5. At around 11, I get the text from Bershinger, hey, it's just me tonight. I'm like, oh. And then obviously, I don't have a kid, but I know enough to know that when you have a kid, your schedule is very, very it's hard to make commitments when you have a young kid, especially.
Let me tell you, even when they're 14 and 17, like mine, or actually 16 going on 17, the schedule still is in flux with great regularity.
Yeah, it's a grind, and the grind never stops. Mike Harmon, thanks for hopping on. I hope you enjoy Chicago. Hope your fantasy leagues. I hope you win at least one of them, unless I'm in it.
Well, we'd hope we talk before that comes to fruition there. I mean, if not, then I was a terrible guest because you didn't ask me back.
Nah, well, I will, whenever I'll tweet at you and Dan, and, because especially last year, I had to really think with all the COVID stuff, but, maybe I for sure. And I don't think you're going to do that bad. I hope not for fantasy to where I don't bring you back on, but hey, man, I appreciate you being so down to come on again. I think you haven't, maybe halfway through the year, getting a little fantasy kind of reboot here on the show from a a fantasy expert, Mike Harmon. I think that has to come to conclusion, man. And the halfway update of fantasy.
Happy to do it, Emmett. You know where to find me.
Yep.
Best of
At
luck to
Swollen
you.
Dome.
Yeah, thanks for being part of our extended family at Fox. Appreciate the tweets and the support, most definitely. And obviously, you're tuned in to what we're doing on the network, and that means a lot. I know not only to me, but to our team, Ben and the guys, and that's pretty sweet. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks for watching this episode, listening. Do whatever you gotta do. Download, like it, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at EmmettNosi04, Instagram EmmettNosi. Blindside Sports 00 is the Instagram where I post clips from shows and when there's new episodes. So you don't want to miss that. I'm gonna be definitely getting better on posting stuff on there and getting an active following. So I'd recommend go following it. Thanks for checking out this episode of Blindside Sports. Stay tuned for the next one. See ya.